You know that feeling? You're sitting at your computer, you've you've clicked on a crucial link or maybe a really high definition video, and suddenly everything just stops.
Oh, yeah. The worst.
Right. You're just staring at that little spinning circle on the screen, the dreaded buffering wheel.
It's basically the universal symbol for, a system that is totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. It's desperately trying to process information while you just sit there paralyzed waiting for it to load.
And it's so frustrating because the machine has the capability to do what you want, but the hardware is just completely choked up in that specific moment.
Yeah, but the real tragedy isn't when this happens to your laptop. The tragedy is when this exact same software glitch happens inside your own brain.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That is a great way to put it.
Picture this. You're in a high-stakes meeting, or maybe you're at a crowded social gathering, right? And someone asks you a question in English.
And the pressure is immediately on.
Right. And here's the maddening part. You actually know the words. You've studied the grammar. You literally have the vocabulary sitting in your head.
But instead of just opening your mouth and answering...
Your brain freezes. You're staring blankly, running two different cognitive operating systems at the exact same time. And you are officially trapped in a mental buffering wheel.
Which is an incredibly common phenomenon. Linguists and cognitive psychologists refer to this as the translation trap.
The translation trap, I like that term.
Yeah, it's arguably the single most exhausting hurdle for anyone learning a second language because, it makes you feel like you're failing even when you actually possess the necessary linguistic data.
It totally does.
Yeah.
So today, we're going to hack the biological source code of that mental freeze. We are completely dismantling the buffering wheel.
I am so ready for this.
If you have ever felt that panic of translating in your head, this deep dive is for you. We're going to explore exactly how to stop doing that and train your brain to think directly in English.
And we've pulled together an incredibly rich stack of sources for this one.
We really have. We're synthesizing neurocognitive research, strategies from top language coaches, people like A.J. Hoagie, Luca Lampariello, Rachel's English, and the actual psychological frameworks used by learners who have successfully rewired their minds.
Because we are really getting into the biological mechanisms of language today. We're not just going to hand out a list of vocabulary tips.
Right, no flashcard lists here.
Exactly. We need to look at the underlying architecture of your mind to understand the why. Like why your brain behaves this way, why your memory systems are fighting each other, and most importantly, how you can physically alter the structure of your brain to fix it.
Because we know the stakes here. Whether you're prepping for a job interview that could change your career trajectory, or just trying to casually chat at a dinner party without feeling completely drained.
Or you just want to feel like yourself when you speak.
Yes, feeling like yourself. We need to solve this. So before we can apply the patch, we need to understand the bug. What is actually happening in the biological hardware of the brain when we get stuck in that translation trap?
So, the bug is fundamentally a cognitive bottleneck. When you're trapped in this translation cycle, a single conversational turn, just someone asking a question and you answering, takes about 5 to 10 seconds to process.
5 to 10 seconds is an eternity in a conversation.
It is. Let's break down the sequence of what your brain is attempting to do in that tiny window. First, you hear the English sentence.
Okay, step one.
Second, your brain intercepts that audio and translates it into your native language.
Right.
Third, you formulate your perfect, nuanced response in your native language. Fourth, you translate that newly created response back into English.
Wow, so much back and forth.
And we aren't even done. Fifth, you run a frantic grammar check on it. And finally, you try to speak.
Oh my gosh, by the time you reach that final step, the conversation has moved on. You've missed your window entirely.
Exactly. And the person you're talking to might think you weren't paying attention. Or worse, they think you just don't understand the language.
Which is so unfair, because the reality is the exact opposite. Your brain isn't slow. It's working massive overtime, doing the jobs of 3 different interpreters at once.
The symptoms of this bottleneck are impossible to hide, too. You speak with a slow, halting rhythm.
You sound a bit robotic, maybe.
Yeah, robotic because of the unnatural pauses where you're desperately searching for the next translated word. And the most significant symptom is the severe mental fatigue.
I can imagine. It sounds exhausting.
It is. Managing 2 active language networks simultaneously places a catastrophic demand on your working memory. Your brain simply does not have the RAM to sustain that kind of processing power for a 30-minute conversation.
Which brings up a massive question. If this process is so exhausting, inefficient, and, frankly, painful,
Mm-hmm.
why is it the default setting?
That's the real question.
Right. Why do almost all of us start out doing this? We weren't born with a translation app in our heads.
We weren't, but we were trained to behave like one. The root cause of the translation trap is the traditional schooling system.
Oh, the classic classroom setup.
Exactly. It's a specific pedagogical approach known as the grammar translation method. If we look back at the history of language education, for over 100 years, schools have taught modern languages like English, French, or Spanish the exact same way they used to teach ancient dead languages like Latin or ancient Greek.
Wait, really? Like Latin?
Yes, they treat the language like an intricate math problem.
Hold on. I remember my high school language classes, but a math problem.
Yeah.
Are we talking about calculating sentences?
In a way, yes. Think about the physical layout of your early English classes. The teacher wrote a word on the chalkboard and put the translation in your native language right next to it with an equal sign.
Oh, you're so right. Cat equals gato.
Exactly. You learned grammatical formulas, subject plus auxiliary verb plus past participle. You were taught to analyze the language, to dissect it.
To calculate your sentences based on a strict set of rules.
Precisely. You were never actually taught to communicate with it in real time.
Man, we were essentially trained to be auditors of the English language, not speakers of it.
That is exactly what happened. And because of that intense focus on rules and direct translation, learners are forced to rely entirely on what neuroscientists call declarative memory.
Declarative memory. Okay, break that down for me.
This is the part of your memory system that is slow, highly conscious, and deeply analytical. It's the mental filing cabinet where you store explicit facts.
Okay, so declarative memory is where I store information like the capital of France, or the fact that the square root of 64 is 8,
Right.
or knowing the explicit rule that run becomes ran in the past tense. I have to consciously open the filing cabinet to retrieve that data.
Exactly right. It requires intentional effort. But native speakers do not use declarative memory to speak their mother tongue.
What do they use instead?
They use procedural memory. This is the fast, automatic, entirely unconscious system you use for complex motor skills.
Like riding a bicycle.
Yes, or typing on a keyboard or tying your shoes. When you ride a bike, you don't consciously calculate the physics of your balance or the angle of the handlebars. Your body just executes the procedure.
Okay, hold on. I need to push back on this premise a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
If we're comparing language to riding a bike, sure, falling off a bike hurts. But in a business meeting, making a huge grammatical error can severely damage your professional credibility.
That's a fair point.
So haven't we been trained to be human calculators for a good reason? Doesn't constantly checking our work against those grammar rules technically make us more accurate? How is sounding careless better than sounding a little bit slow?
It seems perfectly logical to assume that checking your work prevents errors, but the psychological data reveals a fascinating paradox. Excessive grammar checking in real time actually increases your mistake rate.
Wait, what? That makes no sense. How does actively looking for mistakes cause you to make more of them?
It comes down to cognitive load and stress hormones. The linguist Stephen Kreshn developed a concept called the affective filter.
The affective filter.
Right. When you are constantly auditing your own speech, running every sentence through a declarative grammar check before you let it out of your mouth, you induce a state of perfectionism.
Oh, and perfectionism is exhausting.
And that perfectionism immediately triggers performance anxiety. Your body perceives this social pressure as a physical threat, and your cortisol levels just spike.
And cortisol is the absolute enemy of memory retrieval.
It absolutely decimates it. When you are stressed, the affective filter goes up, and your working memory is severely impaired. You literally block your own brain's ability to retrieve the vocabulary words that you already know.
Oh, wow. So the pressure to be grammatically flawless creates the very mental freeze you're terrified of.
Exactly. By trying to be a perfect calculator, you crash the system.
So the pursuit of perfection is the exact mechanism causing the failure. That is a wild, tragic paradox.
It really is.
Okay, so if the grammar translation method built this faulty operating system, what does the biological hardware look like when it is functioning correctly? When someone is truly fluent, what is actually happening in their neural pathways?
To map that out, cognitive psychologists rely on something called the revised hierarchical model of bilingual memory.
Okay, the revised hierarchical model.
Sounds intense. It's just a way to visualize how the brain stores words and their underlying meanings. And the most crucial insight from this model is that the bilingual brain operates with a distinct asymmetry.
Asymmetry.
Yes. Translating forward does not take the same cognitive effort as translating backward.
So you're saying the pathway from my native language into English is physically different than the pathway from English back into my native language.
Completely different. Going from your native language into English, which is forward translation, takes significantly longer and demands much more processing power
Why is that?
because it requires a heavy process called semantic mediation. To translate forward, your brain first has to dive deep into the conceptual meaning, the pure semantic core of the word in your native language.
Okay, so it has to dig up the actual feeling or concept of the word.
Right. It pulls up all its associations and only then attempts to map that heavy concept onto a relatively weak, newly learned English word.
I see. But going the other way is easier.
Much easier. Going backward from an English word to your native language is blazingly fast because your brain has built direct lexical links.
Oh, I think I get it.
It essentially just matches the shape and sound of the English word directly to the shape and sound of the native word without needing to wade through the deep conceptual meaning first.
Let me see if I can visualize this. It's basically a one-way highway.
Okay, I like where this is going.
When I hear an English word, I can hop on a massive 10-lane superhighway straight back to the comfort of my native language.
Yes, exactly.
But when I want to speak English, I'm trying to take my massive, complicated native thoughts and force them down a tiny, unpaved dirt road to get to the English vocabulary.
The dirt road is the perfect way to look at it. And what makes it even harder to navigate that dirt road is that the 10-lane superhighway is always glowing right next to it.
Just tempting you.
Always. Your native language never actually turns off. There is a deeply persistent activation happening in the background.
Persistent activation.
Yeah, researchers actually designed an incredibly clever study with highly proficient German-Dutch bilinguals to prove just how active the native language remains, even when you think you are ignoring it.
Oh, the rhyming crime study. I was reading through the notes on this one, and I really want you to walk us through it because the methodology here is just delightfully sneaky.
It really is an elegant piece of experimental design. So they took these bilinguals, people who speak both German and Dutch fluently, and put them in a testing room.
Okay.
They told the participants, you are only going to be tested in Dutch today. Everything is in Dutch. They sat them in front of a screen and began flashing Dutch words.
Setting the parameters so the participants' brains are fully locked into Dutch mode.
Precisely. Now imagine you're the participant. The researchers want to test your reaction time to a specific target word. Let's say the target word is fiets, which is the Dutch word for bicycle.
Okay, feet.
But right before they show you the word fiets, they briefly flash a prime word on the screen. The prime word is grap, which is the Dutch word for joke.
Okay, so the prime is grap, meaning joke, and the target is fiets, meaning bicycle. Those concepts have absolutely nothing to do with each other. A joke and a bicycle are unrelated.
In Dutch, they are completely unrelated semantically and phonetically, but the researchers were not interested in the Dutch relationship.
Ah, here's the trick.
They wanted to see what the German side of the brain was doing in secret. The German translation of that Dutch prime word grap is witz.
It's
And if you listen closely, the German word witz rhymes perfectly with the Dutch target word fiets.
That is brilliant. So they are testing to see if the brain secretly translated the first word into German.
And the data confirmed it. The researchers found that even though the participants were in a Dutch-only environment, reading only Dutch words and consciously thinking in Dutch, they reacted measurably faster to the word fiets when it was preceded by grap.
Wow. Which means the instant they saw the Dutch word for joke, their brains automatically, unconsciously translated it into the German word Witz. That German word generated a phonetic rhyming sound in the background, which then primed them to recognize the Dutch word fiets faster. Their native language was running a massive, complex background process without them even knowing it.
It definitively proved that the native language is persistently activated. It is always humming in the background. You cannot simply flip a switch and delete your mother tongue from your working memory.
This brings up a major existential panic for a lot of learners, myself included.
Oh, I'm sure.
If my native language is always humming in the background, shaping how I process concepts, and the goal here is to achieve direct cognition in English, does that mean I have to fundamentally alter my core thoughts?
That's a deep question.
If I stop translating from my native language, am I going to lose my logical reasoning skills? Am I literally changing my personality?
That fear of losing your intellectual identity is incredibly common, but neurobiology offers immense comfort here.
Thank goodness.
The MIT McGovern Institute conducted a landmark study using functional MRI scans to answer this exact question. Do logical reasoning and language processing share the same biological hardware in the brain?
So how do they test it? You can't just ask someone to be logical inside an MRI machine.
You have to give them specific, complex tasks while tracking the blood flow in their brain. The researchers gave the participants rigorous logic puzzles.
Like what kind of puzzles?
Inductive and deductive reasoning tasks, spatial reasoning, the kind of raw cognitive problem solving that requires intense intellect.
And as they were solving these puzzles, what parts of the brain were lighting up on the scan?
The scans showed massive activation in the frontoparietal multiple demand network. We call this the MD network.
The MD network. Okay.
This is your brain's raw processing center for logic, recognizing patterns, and managing abstract concepts. But here is the revolutionary part. While the MD network was blazing with activity, the frontotemporal network, which is the brain's dedicated language center, remained completely quiet.
Wait, totally quiet. So they were solving highly complex logical problems without using their language centers at all.
They took it a step further to be absolutely sure. They tested a group of patients suffering from severe global aphasia.
What does that mean?
These are individuals who, due to stroke or brain injury, have suffered catastrophic damage to their frontotemporal network. They have virtually lost all their language abilities. They cannot construct sentences or understand complex grammar.
Oh, that is devastating. But how did they do in the logic puzzles?
They solved the complex logic puzzles just as quickly and accurately as the neurologically healthy control group.
That is a staggering finding. It completely separates the concept of intelligence from the concept of vocabulary.
Exactly. It proves that language is not the actual medium of logical thought. Language is just the external output tool we use to format and communicate that thought to other people.
Okay, that is incredibly relieving. Thinking in English doesn't mean I have to undergo a personality transplant or change how my brain processes logic.
Not at all.
My raw intelligence, my humor, my analytical skills, they all live safely in the MD network. I'm essentially just taking the same computer processor and plugging it into a different output cable. I don't have to change the thought. I just had to map it directly to English vocabulary.
You are bypassing the translation step, not altering the intellect. Which brings us to a highly debated topic in the language coaching community.
Oh, let's hear it.
If the ultimate goal is direct cognition plugging straight into that English output cable, should learners just go cold turkey? Should you swear off translating a single word from day one of learning a language?
Because you see this everywhere online. Coaches preaching absolute immersion. Never translate.
Yeah.
Burn your bilingual dictionary.
Right.
But honestly, that sounds impossible if you're starting from zero.
And that extreme approach lacks nuance, which is why we look to the perspective of Luca Lampariello. He is a highly respected polyglot who speaks over a dozen languages.
Over a dozen, wow.
And he strongly argues that abandoning translation completely in the early stages actually places you at a severe cognitive disadvantage.
Hold on. We just spent the last 20 minutes establishing that translation is the fundamental enemy of fluency. We called it a trap.
We did.
Isn't it totally contradictory to make our entire mission stop translating, but then concede that translation is actually fine sometimes?
It seems contradictory until you analyze the mechanics of how an adult brain acquires abstract knowledge. If you ban all translation early on, you rob the learner of the ability to draw incredibly fast, highly accurate connections.
Connections like what?
Let's look at abstract concepts. Imagine you are an English speaker learning German, and you encounter the word Gelegenheit.
Okay, Gelegenheit. I have no idea what that means.
If you follow the strict never translate rule, you might try to learn it through monolingual descriptions or a series of complex pictures showing people in various situations.
That sounds like a game of charades.
Exactly. You could spend 20 minutes trying to infer the meaning, and you might still get the nuance slightly wrong. It's exhausting and inefficient. But if you allow yourself one quick translation and map Gelegenheit to the English word opportunity boom, the concept is instantly anchored. You leverage your existing adult knowledge to leapfrog the confusion.
Or what about when languages share structural DNA? Lamparello talked about learning Spanish when you already know Italian.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
If you already deeply understand the Italian sentence structure, you can almost map the Spanish vocabulary directly over it, one for one. It acts as a massive shortcut, a Rosetta Stone that's already in your head.
Exactly. You use the native language structure as a temporary scaffolding. So if translation isn't the ultimate villain in the beginning, what is the actual culprit causing the mental freeze?
The buffering wheel.
Right. Lamparello points out that the real enemy isn't translation itself. It's the sheer burden of complexity.
Complexity, like trying to use big words.
More than just big words. As an adult, you are incredibly sophisticated in your native language. You have nuanced, highly specific, philosophically complex thoughts. You're used to expressing humor, irony, and deep analysis. But when you try to speak English, your brain's default reflex is to take that massive, complex adult thought and attempt to instantly convert it into a language where you only have an intermediate vocabulary.
Oh, I see the mechanics of the freeze now. Let's build on our computer analogy. It's like taking a brand new, visually stunning game like Cyberpunk 2077 and trying to run it on a Windows 95 desktop computer from 30 years ago.
Yes, perfect analogy.
The hardware is going to physically melt, the fan is going to whir uncontrollably, the screen will lock up, and the entire system crashes. When a 35-year-old professional tries to explain a global market trends using 3 months' worth of English vocabulary, the working memory crashes because the software of the thought is too heavy for the linguistic hardware.
The system crash is the buffering wheel. You've overloaded the capacity. To avoid this crash, we can apply a foundational psychological concept known as Vygotsky's zone of proximal development.
How does child psychology apply to adult language learning?
Vygotsky theorized that learning happens best in the zone just beyond what a student can do independently but can achieve with guidance.
Okay, the sweet spot of learning.
Exactly. In this context, translation is not a permanent crutch. It's a set of training wheels. When a child learns to ride a bike, they don't jump straight onto a two-wheeler. They lean on the training wheels to handle the complexity of balance while they focus on pedaling.
Ah, I see.
As an adult learner, you lean on translation to break down your massive, complex adult thoughts into smaller, simpler, bite-sized grammatical pieces.
You use translation to find your linguistic balance.
Exactly. You simplify the thought using your native language as a guide. And gradually, as you gain massive input listening and reading, you naturally rely on those training wheels less and less until you are pedaling entirely on your own in English.
I love that framework. Translation is a temporary training wheel to manage complexity, not a lifelong prison sentence.
Well said.
But eventually, to achieve true fluency, the training wheels have to come off. We have to start building that direct output cable. So where is the safest place to start doing this? Because jumping straight into a high-pressure business meeting to test this out seems like a terrible idea.
The worst idea. You start in an environment with zero social pressure, zero judgment, and zero consequences. You start inside your own head.
Inside your head.
We have to build an internal boot camp to systematically train what we call the inner monologue.
This is where we transition from theory to highly practical application. The coach Rachel's English outlined a fantastic low-stakes exercise for this called the 10-second naming game.
It is brilliant in its simplicity.
It really is. You just look around wherever you're sitting right now, and you rapidly name objects in English for 10 seconds, just firing them off. Desk, monitor, coffee mug, window, lamp.
It might feel juvenile, almost like a toddler pointing at things, but neurologically, you are doing something profound.
What's happening in the brain?
You're forcing your brain's semantic network to deliberately switch over to the English lexicon without waiting for an external conversational prompt.
Right.
You are actively waking up the English side of the brain.
And the real magic happens when you inevitably hit a wall. In Rachel's example, she was looking around her recording studio and pointed to her ring light. Or she mentioned looking in a mirror and noticing her collarbone.
Right.
If you're playing this game and you point to a specific type of lamp and realize, wait, I actually have no idea how to say that in English, you don't just skip it.
No, you can't skip it.
You look the word up, you visualize the physical object, you say the English word out loud, and you add it to your working vocabulary.
By doing that, you're actively bypassing the native language translation route. You aren't linking the English word ring light to the word for it in your mother tongue. You are wiring the sound of the English word directly to the physical image of the glowing circle in your room.
And we can graduate from just naming static nouns to narrating verbs with action narration. We pulled an amazing source from a Reddit community of language learners where a user detailed how they successfully broke the translation habit using this exact method.
Oh, this was a great case study.
They just started constantly narrating their mundane life, thinking things like, I'm opening my laptop, I'm pouring the coffee, I'm reheating leftovers in the microwave.
What they're doing is constructing an immersive linguistic environment internally.
It's exactly like having a tiny, dedicated English narrator living inside your head, constantly running a mundane documentary commentary on your life.
A documentary of your morning routine.
Yeah, and the logic is sound. If you do this enough, you are preloading the English vocabulary for all your daily routines. When someone actually asks you what you did that morning, the buffering yield shrinks because the pathway has already been cleared.
The pathway is cleared because you are actively converting declarative memory into procedural memory through incredibly high-frequency repetition. But we must address a vital biological caveat here.
Oh, right.
This internal boot camp works great for most, but not for everyone.
Right, because not everyone's brain works the exact same way.
Exactly. This nuance was heavily highlighted in a guide by Joy Gina, who focuses on neurodivergent learners. A significant portion of the population, particularly verbal processors or those with ADHD, do not possess a silent internal monologue.
Wait, really? No internal voice at all?
Their thoughts simply do not feel concrete or real unless they are spoken out loud.
Which means if a language coach tells a verbal processor to just sit quietly and think your thoughts in English, it's as useless as telling them to naturally breathe underwater. It goes against their neurological wiring.
Precisely. So for these specific learners, Joy Gina developed a brilliant accommodation called the whisper-to-silent pathway.
The whisper-to-silent pathway.
You don't start by thinking silently. You start by actively whispering your narration out loud, or at least physically mouthing the words.
By whispering, you are physically engaging the motor cortex, moving the tongue and lips, which bridges the gap between external speech and internal dialogue.
Yes. You provide the physical feedback the brain is craving, and then slowly, over a period of weeks, you consciously reduce the volume of the whisper. You make it quieter and quieter until the physical movement fades, and it finally becomes a purely mental voice. It's a neurological stepping stone.
That is an incredibly empathetic and practical workaround. And while we're exploring the psychology of that inner voice, there is a fascinating psychological trick regarding how we actually address ourselves in that narration.
You're referring to the second-person advantage.
Yes, the research by psychologist Ethan Kross at the University of Michigan on self-talk is highly relevant here. He found that the pronouns you use inside your own head drastically alter your emotional state and your cognitive performance.
So true.
Break that down for me. If I'm terrified about an upcoming meeting, what is the difference between saying I versus using my name?
If your internal narrator says, I can do this presentation, I am prepared, you are still subjectively trapped inside your own immediate anxiety. The emotional filter is still high.
Okay, I'm still feeling the pressure.
But if you shift to the second person, if you use your own name and say, Sarah, you can do this presentation, you have prepared the data, you know the material, you neurologically create emotional distance.
You're essentially stepping outside of yourself to act as your own coach.
Exactly. It activates the prefrontal cortex in a way that provides superior cognitive control. It radically lowers the affective filter we discussed earlier, reducing the cortisol spike.
Lowering that anxiety.
Yes, and doing the self-coaching in English is a double victory. You are practicing complex sentence structures, and you are subconsciously teaching your nervous system to associate the English language with feelings of control, authority, and emotional regulation, rather than anxiety and panic.
Okay, so our internal boot camp is fully operational. We have our tiny English narrator. We're using the second-person advantage to stay calm. We're naming objects, and we're narrating our morning coffee routine.
Sounds like a solid routine.
But here's the reality check. Pointing at a coffee mug and saying, mug, does not equal fluency. Real fluid conversation requires connecting abstract ideas seamlessly at speed. Nouns aren't enough. Doesn't this mean we have to fundamentally destroy and rebuild how we acquire vocabulary?
It absolutely does. If you want to achieve direct cognition, you have to completely abandon the way you were taught to memorize vocabulary in school. You cannot learn single words paired with their native translation.
No more flashcards.
If you have a flashcard with the English word on the front and the translation in your mother tongue written on the back, throw it away. You are actively, physically hardwiring the translation trap into your neural pathways every time you flip that card. You are paving the dirt road and ignoring the highway.
Because I'm reinforcing the semantic mediation. I'm training my brain that the only way to access the English word is to go through the native word first. So if flashcards are out, what is the alternative architecture?
The alternative is learning in chunks. You must learn vocabulary through phrases and collocations.
Okay.
A collocation is simply a sequence of words that naturally statistically occur together in a given language.
For example, native English speakers say heavy rain, not thick rain, even though technically the adjectives might mean similar things in another language.
Exactly. Or, instead of isolating the verb improve on a flashcard, you learn the entire functional chunk. I want to improve my English.
This makes so much sense when you think about processing speed. Native speakers don't build sentences word by word like they're laying individual bricks. They think in pre-assembled panels.
Pre-assembled panels, I like that.
If I learn the entire chunk, I want to improve my... I don't have to pause and do the mental calculus of figuring out the subject-verb agreement or which preposition follows the verb. I just grab the entire pre-assembled linguistic block and drop it smoothly into the conversation.
It drastically reduces the cognitive load on your working memory. But to truly anchor these chunks without relying on your native language, you must utilize visual verbal pairing.
Visual verbal pairing.
When you encounter the word apple, do not let your brain reach for the word for apple in your mother tongue. Consciously and forcefully connect the English sound apple directly to the visual image of a shiny, crisp red fruit in your mind.
You're building a direct bridge between the sound and the physical reality. And we can do this with abstract emotions too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The coach, Tiffany, who has an incredible track record with adult learners, suggests that when you learn a word like disgust or frustration, you shouldn't just read a definition. She tells her students to physically contort their faces, make a disgusted facial expression while saying the word disgust.
It's a phenomenal technique because it links the phonetic sound of the English word directly to a physiological, somatic sensation in your own body, completely bypassing the need for a native language intermediary.
Which ties into this profound linguistic theory we found in the research, collocative meaning.
This is a big one.
This concept blew my mind because it explains why translated words always feel so hollow. In my native language, a word is never just a cold dictionary definition. Take a word like birthday.
Okay, birthday.
When I hear that in my mother tongue, it isn't just the anniversary of my birth. It sits in a massive, heavy, tangible web of context. I instantly visualize my childhood kitchen. I smell the specific type of cake my mother baked. I feel the anticipation of opening a gift. I remember the sound of my friends singing. The word has immense emotional and historical weight.
It is heavily tethered to your episodic memory. But when you memorize an English word off a stark white flashcard, it is incredibly flimsy. It has zero weight. It has no web of context. Its only lifeline, its only tether to reality is the translation printed on the back of the card.
Which means if I lose access to the translation, the English word just floats away. It vanishes from my memory.
Precisely. To truly think in English, you have to construct a brand new web of context for the English vocabulary. The words must become independent, living entities in your mind, colored by new English experiences, visual associations, and physical sensations. They cannot survive merely as pale shadows of your native vocabulary.
Okay, the theory is beautiful, but let's pressure test this in the real world. Say I have built my web of context. I'm in a conversation at a networking event. I'm speaking in chunks. I'm visualizing my concepts.
You're doing great.
And then tragedy strikes. I completely blank on a specific, crucial English noun. I need to talk about my car, but the word for the building where I park it completely evaporates from my mind. If I refuse to translate, and I don't know the word, aren't I forced to stop the conversation, pull out my phone, and open a translation app?
Doing that is the worst possible outcome because pulling out the app instantly breaks the immersion, shatters your confidence, and severely reinforces the bottleneck.
So what's the alternative?
The solution is not translation. The solution is a linguistic survival skill called circumlocution. It is the art of conversational repair.
Circumlocution. Literally talking circles around the word.
Exactly. The source from VOA Learning English provided a perfect template for this. If the word garage vanishes from your working memory, you do not panic, and you definitely do not reach for your phone.
Right.
You simply describe the function or the appearance of the object using the simple vocabulary you do possess. You say to the person, the place inside where I put my car, or the small room attached to my house for the vehicle.
And what's amazing is that native speakers do this constantly. We forget words in our own languages all the time, and we just say, you know, the thing you use to open the wine bottle instead of corkscrew.
Exactly.
The listener understands instantly, the conversation flow is maintained, and most importantly, your brain remained locked exclusively in the English operating system.
It proves that absolute vocabulary perfection is not a prerequisite for fluency. Circumlocution is deeply empowering because it removes the fear of forgetting. So we have the internal boot camp running. We are narrating our day, we are learning in chunks, and we know how to repair a broken sentence.
They've gone good.
But to make these pathways truly automatic, To upgrade them from a dirt road to a superhighway, we need intense active practice. How do we move from conscious effort to an unconscious reflex?
We have to engineer our inputs and our outputs. Let's look at the input side first. The legendary language coach A.J. Hoagie is a massive advocate for a technique he calls deep listening.
Deep listening.
Now, this is not what most people do, which is passively leaving an English podcast running in the background while vacuuming the living room, hoping the language just seeps into their brain via osmosis.
Passive listening has its place for general ear training, but it will not rewire your cognitive pathways. Deep listening requires intense focus.
Right. Hoagie's method is almost aggressively repetitive. You take a very short audio clip, maybe a 3 to 5 minute story, or a realistic dialogue, and you listen to that exact same 3-minute clip every single day for 7 to 14 days straight.
It demands incredible discipline. Most learners get bored and want new content every day.
It sounds mind-numbing, listening to the same 3 minutes for a week.
It might feel tedious to the conscious mind, but the neurological payoff is astronomical. And the critical rule is, you do this without reading a transcript and without mentally translating a single word.
Just focusing on the sound.
You just let the audio wash over you. Let's look at the timeline. On day 1, your brain is just frantically trying to grasp the macro context. Who is speaking? What is the general mood? By day 3, the fog starts to lift, and you're hearing the individual phrases clearly.
And by day 7,
By day 7, something magical happens during your sleep cycles. The grammatical structures, the specific collocations, the rhythm and intonation of those exact sentences have physically seeped into your procedural memory. Those phrases become entirely automatic. You don't have to think about them anymore. They just exist in your mind.
Okay, so deep listening builds the internal database. But language requires output. We have to physically train the mouth. And for that, we paired deep listening with a technique called shadowing.
Shadowing.
The guide from Fluent breaks this down perfectly. You find a video of a native speaker, maybe a TED Talk or a YouTube vlog. You pause it, and you actively repeat what they say out loud. But the secret sauce is that you do not repeat the entire sentence at once, because that overloads the working memory again. You repeat in chunks.
This circles right back to collocative meaning. You are training the brain to recognize the natural boundaries of phrases.
Exactly. If the speaker in the video says, there are a lot of things that people on our team say all the time, you do not try to parrot all 16 words.
That's too much.
You pause the video after there are a lot of things, and you imitate the exact pronunciation, the pitch, the emotion. Then you play the next chunk. You are physically training the muscles of your jaw and tongue while simultaneously hardwiring the syntax patterns into your brain.
Which perfectly aligns with the broader cognitive science regarding how humans acquire any form of extreme expertise. Whether it is thinking in English, playing grandmaster chess, or performing neurosurgery, the mechanics of mastery are the same.
Mechanics of mastery.
We can apply the framework popularized by Veritasium regarding the 4 principles of expertise. To master direct cognition, you need repeated attempts, a valid environment, timely feedback, and constant challenge.
I want to dive deep into this because the analogy they use in that framework completely changed how I view language practice. It's the analogy of the coin flip versus the darts.
Oh, this is a fantastic analogy.
Let's say you want to become a world-class predictor of coin flips. You sit in a room and you flip a quarter 10,000 times. You are getting instant, timely feedback. It's either heads or tails. You are making repeated attempts. But despite all that practice, you will never, ever get better at predicting the outcome.
Because the environment is fundamentally invalid. A coin flip is pure chaotic randomness. There are no underlying rules or patterns for your brain's MD network to latch onto and learn from.
Exactly. Now compare that to throwing darts. Throwing a dart is a valid environment. It operates on the strict laws of physics, gravity, and aerodynamics. When you throw the dart, you get immediate feedback. It hit the wall 2 inches high and to the left. Your brain instantly calculates the error, adjusts the motor cortex, changes your elbow angle, and your next throw is more accurate.
The translation to language learning is profound. Randomly watching hours of English YouTube videos without actively understanding the grammar or the vocabulary is the equivalent of flipping the coin.
Flipping the coin.
It feels like you are studying, you are putting in the hours, but you are operating in an invalid environment of noise. Your brain cannot extract the patterns.
But English itself, despite all its bizarre spelling rules and idioms, is a highly patterned, structured, valid environment. Shadowing and deep listening are the equivalent of throwing the darts.
Yes.
You throw the dart, meaning you attempt to speak the chunk of vocabulary. You hear how your pronunciation differs from the native speaker. You get that immediate feedback. You adjust your tongue placement, and you throw the dart again.
You are engaging in deliberate biomechanical practice, not just passive exposure.
Throwing darts, not flipping coins. I think that is a massive takeaway for anyone who feels like they have been studying for years with no progress. Okay, so we have the foundation built, the internal boot camp is running, we are shadowing, we are listening deeply. But eventually, the ultimate test arrives.
The real world.
You have to output complex, unpredictable thoughts in real time, under immense social pressure, with another human being staring at you. You have to step out of the safe boot camp and onto the battlefield.
And this is the exact threshold where most learners retreat back into the translation trap. The pressure spikes, the cortisol flows, and the buffering wheel returns. To survive this phase, we have to utilize advanced frameworks. Specifically, we need to look at highly structured role-play scenarios and metacognitive scaffolding.
Let's start with role play. Because just reading a written dialogue out of a textbook silently in your head is totally passive. Fluency doesn't live on the page, it lives in the vocal cords.
It definitely does.
When you physically role-play a scenario, you force 3 critical cognitive mechanisms to fire simultaneously. First is activation, the ability to rip vocabulary out of your memory banks while under a time constraint. Second is sequencing, understanding the unspoken social flow of a conversation, the natural rhythm of greeting, making a request, and closing.
And the third.
And third is repair, actually practicing that circumlocution we talked about when you inevitably mess up.
And historically, the biggest barrier to this was finding a patient native speaker to practice with. But thanks to recent technological leaps, you don't even need a human partner to do this effectively anymore. AI language tutors, like the conversational agents developed by PracticeMe, are perfectly designed to simulate these exact dynamic scenarios.
But the sources noted a very specific, almost bizarre physiological rule for role-playing. Whether you are doing it with an AI or just talking to a mirror,
Yeah.
you absolutely must do it standing up. You cannot read from a written script. And you have to inject a plot twist into the scenario each time.
It sounds strange, but the biomechanics and psychology behind standing up are fascinating. When you stand up, your posture changes, which physically alters your diaphragm and how your voice projects.
Posture matters.
But more importantly, standing up mimics the physical, spatial reality of a real-world encounter. If you practice a presentation sitting slumped on your couch and then try to deliver it standing in a boardroom, your brain experiences a spatial disconnect that can trigger memory retrieval failure. By standing, you align the practice environment with the performance environment.
That makes perfect sense. State-dependent memory. And adding the twist, like say you were practicing checking into a hotel. The twist is that the clerk informs you they lost your reservation and they are fully booked.
Adding the twist trains your brain to handle sudden unpredictability. Real conversation is chaotic. If you only practice perfectly scripted scenarios, your brain panics when the script breaks. The twist forces your MD network to rapidly calculate a new solution while keeping the language network locked in English.
But what if the challenge isn't just ordering coffee or checking into a hotel? What if I need to say something highly complex, like summarizing a massive quarterly report from my boss, or telling a long, winding story at a dinner party?
That's where people usually freeze.
That level of complexity is exactly what triggers the system crash and sends me running back to my native language to organize my thoughts.
That is precisely when you deploy metacognitive scaffolding.
Metacognitive scaffolding.
These are pre-built mental frameworks that organize the architecture of your thoughts, so your brain doesn't have to waste processing power figuring out how to tell the story. It just has to fill in the English blanks.
Give me an example. Let's say I want to tell a story about something crazy that happened on my commute.
For narrative storytelling, you can rely on the SWBST framework.
SWBST. Somebody wanted, but so then.
Exactly. It breaks the narrative into 5 distinct pillars. Somebody who is the main character wanted what was their initial goal, but what was the sudden conflict or obstacle? So how did they react to the obstacle? Then what was the final resolution?
Oh, I see. So if I use that scaffold, I might say,
Yeah.
my coworker David, somebody wanted to bring coffee for the whole office. But he tripped on the stairs and dropped all 6 cups. So he had to run back to the cafe and buy them all again. So then he arrived 20 minutes late and completely drenched in latte then.
Perfect. By forcing your narrative onto those 5 specific pillars in English, you give your brain a rigid track to run on. You eliminate the panic of, what do I say next?
That's so helpful.
And for more professional or informational settings, like summarizing an article or a report, you can use the SAC framework. State, assign, action, complete.
State the name of the article, assign the author, describe the action or argument they are making, and complete it with the supporting details. It's like handing your brain a fully drawn architectural blueprint so it doesn't panic and run back to the native language to figure out how to construct the building.
It acts as an external hard drive for your working memory, freeing up your cognitive resources to focus entirely on vocabulary retrieval.
This is incredibly practical, but I have to raise a red flag based on the research. We have spent this entire deep dive advocating for internal practice. Talking to yourself, narrating your life, whispering in your room, doing solo role plays. Is there a hidden danger to only practicing with yourself?
There is a massive, highly documented risk. If your only conversational partner is your own internal monologue, you run the very real risk of developing a phenomenon sometimes referred to as English, or a highly fossilized interlanguage.
Meaning you just get really, really good at speaking a totally incorrect version of the language.
Essentially, yes. If you are constantly talking to yourself, there is zero external feedback mechanism. If you are consistently making a specific grammatical error or mispronouncing a critical vowel sound, your brain doesn't know it's wrong.
Right, because there's no one to correct you.
In fact, through repetition, your brain assumes it is correct and physically hardwires that error into your procedural memory. Without new, high-quality input from native speakers or corrective feedback from an AI tutor to force you to adapt, you solidify your mistakes.
You build a superhighway, but it leads to the wrong destination. You absolutely must balance the solo output with massive, high-quality input to keep your internal compass calibrated.
Yes.
But here's the ultimate emotional hurdle. Even with all these scaffolds and tools, if a listener is already terrified of speaking, if their effective filter is through the roof, and just the thought of English makes their heart race, isn't telling them to stand up and do an unpredictable role play just going to spike their anxiety and cause another catastrophic mental freeze.
That is a very valid, deeply human concern. You cannot force a stressed brain to perform. And this is where a brilliant psychological strategy from the English coach Tiffany comes into play. She advises her most anxious students to practice in what she calls quiet moments.
Quiet moments. Paint a picture of what that actually looks like.
It means deliberately practicing your English thinking when you are in a state of profound physical and psychological relaxation. You do not practice before a big meeting. You practice when you are sitting in your most comfortable chair on a Sunday morning. You practice while taking a warm, relaxing shower. You practice while lying in bed right before you drift off to sleep. In those specific low-stress moments, you deliberately initiate your internal English monologue. You describe your day, you think about a friend, you plan your weekend.
Why does it matter that I'm on the couch or in the shower? Why does the physical location change the language acquisition?
Because you are actively neurologically hacking your nervous system. Right now, your amygdala, the fear center of your brain, associates the English language with the panic of a high-pressure interview, the embarrassment of a confusing social interaction, and the exhaustion of the buffering wheel. English equals stress.
The fight or flight response.
Right. By deliberately practicing in a deeply safe, quiet state, you are rewiring that emotional connection.
Oh, wow. Classical conditioning.
Yeah.
Pavlov's dogs, but for grammar.
Exactly. You are systematically teaching your nervous system that English is a safe, relaxed, enjoyable mode of operation. When the brain associates the language with calmness, the effective filter drops permanently and the vocabulary flows without resistance.
We are literally hacking our own nervous system, which brings us to the ultimate payoff. If a listener commits to this rigorous path, if they push past the grammar translation trauma, if they narrate their day, use the whisper pathway, shadow videos in chunks, deploy the SWBST framework, and successfully rewire their anxiety in quiet moments, what is the final reward inside their actual physical brain?
The reward is profound structural neuroplasticity. We are not just talking about forming better psychological habits. We are talking about physically, anatomically altering the organic matter of your brain.
Wait, you're saying I can physically change the shape of my brain just by thinking in English?
Unquestionably. Sustained daily interaction with a second language, particularly when striving for direct cognition, causes measurable visible changes on an MRI. Brain scans of dedicated language learners show significant increases in gray matter volume in very specific, highly specialized areas of the brain.
Gray matter is the actual computational tissue of the brain. So where is it growing?
One key area is the left inferior parietal lobule.
The left inferior parietal lobule.
This is the region responsible for mapping word forms directly to their conceptual meanings. As you stop translating and build direct links, this area physically bulks up to handle the new processing speed. We also see growth in the left thalamus.
What does the thalamus do?
The thalamus acts as the ultimate neurological gatekeeper. It's the switchboard that manages language selection. It's the muscle that literally holds back your native language when you are trying to speak English.
So when I feel that physical sensation of biting my tongue, when I can feel the native word pushing to get out, but I force myself to find the English word, that mental friction I am feeling is actually the left thalamus working out.
Yes, you are literally going to the neurogym. You are building physical, biological muscle to suppress the native language so you can think directly in English.
That is amazing.
Furthermore, the right anterior cingulate cortex, the ACC, which is the brain's conflict monitoring center responsible for rapid task switching, physically adapts to become hyper-efficient at catching and suppressing native language intrusions before they even reach your conscious awareness. Your brain physically remodels its own architecture to make the translation trap biologically obsolete.
That is unbelievable. My brain is physically rewiring its own hardware to delete the buffering wheel.
And the most beautiful part is that the benefits of this neuroplasticity extend far beyond just speaking English fluently. Achieving this level of multilingualism acts as a massive form of cognitive reserve.
Cognitive reserve.
It is essentially biological anti-aging for the brain. Extensive neurological studies have shown that the brain of an active bilingual person can appear structurally and functionally up to 6 years younger than the brain of a monolingual peer. It significantly delays the onset of cognitive decline.
6 years younger. So by doing these daily narration exercises, I'm not just improving my vocabulary for a job interview. I am literally building a neurological shield that keeps my brain youthful and resilient.
It's incredible, really.
Okay, let's take a deep breath and recap this incredible science-heavy journey we just took. We started by diagnosing the actual bug in the system, the grammar translation bottleneck that century-old schooling methods forced upon us, turning us into exhausted human calculators instead of fluid conversationalists.
We then explored the biological reality of direct cognition. We learned through the MIT scans that we do not need to change our logic or our personality to think in English because our intellect operates independently of our language center.
We just need to build a new direct output highway.
We acknowledge that translation can be a useful training wheel to handle complex adult thoughts, but we must actively work to take those wheels off.
We take those wheels off by building a robust internal beat camp. We wake up the English network with the 10-second naming game and constant action narration. We build deep, heavy collocative meaning by abandoning isolated flashcards, learning in functional chunks, and tying those chunks to visceral, visual, and physical sensations.
And we practice active output with the discipline of deep listening and shadowing native speakers.
We protect our working memory using metacognitive frameworks like SWBST to organize our complex stories. And we purposefully practice in quiet moments to classically condition our nervous system to associate English with total calmness.
And the ultimate reward for this discipline is a physically remodeled, denser, younger, and vastly more efficient brain.
This has been absolutely mind-blowing. I feel like I finally have the blueprint to fix the glitch. But before we wrap up this deep dive, what is one final provocative thought we can leave our listeners with? Something a little advanced to mull over as they go about narrating their day.
Consider a highly advanced concept known in polyglot circles as language laddering. Let's say you commit to this process. You completely break the translation trap. English becomes a seamless, comfortable, direct language of thought for you. The buffering wheel is gone, but human curiosity never stops. What happens if, a few years from now, you decide you want to learn a third language, say Japanese or French?
Oh, wow. Okay, my instinct would be to go out and buy a textbook that translates French back into my native mother tongue, right? Start the whole process over.
That is what most people do, and it is a missed opportunity. What if, instead of using your native language, you actively choose to use English as your exclusive medium of instruction to learn that third language?
So I buy the French textbook written in English.
Yeah.
We use the English to French dictionary. I watch French tutorials taught by English speakers.
Exactly. By doing this, you are no longer just practicing English. You are using English as a heavy-duty analytical tool to acquire new knowledge. You are relying on it to process completely novel concepts. By using English to decode a third language, you permanently cement English deep into your MD network as an intuitive, foundational operating system. You lock it into your brain's architecture forever while simultaneously building your next language.
That is absolute next-level cognitive hacking, using the language you just conquered to build the bridge to the next one. So the next time you're in a meeting or at a party and you feel that terrible freeze, the next time you find yourself staring into space, feeling that mental buffering wheel spinning,
Yeah.
I want you to remember the neurobiology we talked about today.
You are not broken.
Exactly. You're not slow. You are just running outdated software. But you have the exact tools right now to upgrade your own operating system. You do not have to wait for the translation to load. You can bypass the bottleneck entirely, plug directly into the English highway, and just speak.
It demands deliberate daily practice, and it requires you to step out of your comfort zone. But the absolute freedom on the other side of that bottleneck is worth every single second of effort.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Now go stand in your kitchen, look at your coffee machine, and start narrating. We'll see you next time.